This is The Way Podcast on FM 91.7 WHUS Stores at the top of the hour. I'm your host, Bill Trofesky, and today we'll be talking about the economy between the two parties of America. Now, before I introduce our guests, I must state that the views expressed in this program do not reflect the views of the staff, management, or licensee of the station. So, now to get into it, we have Max Mills, who is a liberal and has written as a liberal political journalist, and Charles Mill, who is a conservative who has written for names like Sean Hannity. Can you guys introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourselves?
My name is Max Mills. I'm a liberal, and I've written for multiple political journals.
Beautiful. It's going to be hard to top that.
It's what I do.
Yeah, my name is Charlie Mills. I have written for names like Sean Hannity and a few other people.
We're brothers.
We are brothers.
That's, I think, the key thing. When people ask me, what's your biggest qualification as like a political voice? I say, well, my brother's Charlie Mills.
And that just seals it for you. You're set.
Yeah, that just seals it. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I just say my name's Charlie Mills.
Wow. I thought you were going to hit it back. Yeah, me either. No, it's fine.
Oh, no.
Perfect. Well, good to hear. And let's get into it. So let's just jump right in. Supply side economics. What, can you give me some of the liberal side and some of the conservative side?
Yeah, I think Charlie should go first with this because supply side economics is really just the fancy pants word that conservatives use to describe their economic views.
The fancy pants word. Okay.
You don't think it's fancy?
First, so the audience knows.
Okay, so essentially what I believe is that the best way to spur economic growth is to deregulate the system. I believe that the only way that wealth is created is through the creation of new products and services. And so we should maximize the ability to create.
Pure capitalism.
Yeah. And, I don't know. Yeah, so my opinion on all that is, obviously I think some degree of regulation is necessary. And in fact, I think in some places, like in antitrust laws and other things, I think it's almost necessary in order to ensure a truly fair free market. I also think that the main driving force behind any economy is demand, and that supply rises to meet demand. You don't want, that's it.
Of course, yeah. I believe that in order that supply creates demand, essentially.
Yeah.
That supply comes first, and then Max would say that demand comes first. It's the chicken and egg situation.
Yeah, it's the supply and demand.
I don't know. I'll take chicken.
All right, I'll take egg.
All right. Can you tell me anything about the Laffer curve? Charlie, do you believe in that? Because that's a conservative talking point on supply side economics.
Yes, I believe in it. The idea of the Laffer curve is that that there is a point where you most efficiently get tax revenue because let's say you have a 100% top marginal tax rate, for example. That's obviously going to stop economic growth. So, which would in turn reduce tax revenue in the long run. And if you reduce the top marginal tax rate to a certain point, then the economic growth from it would create more tax revenue because you would be taking from a bigger pool. It's a smaller proportion, but it's a bigger pool that you're taking.
Yeah, so basically kind of the idea here is if you're taxing 0%, you're not getting any tax revenue like OBS, right? But if you're getting 100%, then people are going to, dodge it and find loopholes or just leave, and also won't have any money to do anything else. Ultimately you need human beings in the economy with money in order to
the idea is that there's an optimal tax rate.
Yeah, there's an optimal tax rate. Yeah. And it's also, I think, worth mentioning that how they say when you're running from a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear, just faster than your slowest friend. When people talk about stuff, what the optimal tax rate is, there's a lot of concerns about people leaving, about people storing their wealth somewhere else. But really, we just have to be better than the other guys. So if the rest of the world raised their taxes to 95%, I think 90% would do okay.
Yeah.
Except insofar as then they would have no money to do anything.
Well, yeah, and then
I'm talking specifically about the leaving portion.
And then the point is that Yes, with the leaving portion, yes, that is true.
Isolating.
Yes, you can isolate it to that one variable.
Yeah, isolate it to that one variable. And that's really the key is you just got to isolate it to one variable at all times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Single variable analysis.
Yeah.
You can make anything sound good.
I mean, that's too many variables. That's really complicated.
Yeah.
So.
All right. What's the tax rate in America right now?
Well, it depends on, there's a lot of different ways to tax.
Income.
Yeah, it depends on your income. And also, we're talking about like direct income.
Corporations.
I believe the top marginal tax rate is 37.5%.
Is it 37.5%? I believe so.
Yeah, well. Nice. Yeah, 37. That's what my roommate just told me, who's a senior going for a degree in economics. Now.
Well, he would know, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've always respected our seniors.
Good. And you mentioned something like if taxes are too high, they'll try to export or find loopholes.
Yeah.
Do we have some loopholes today? Because I see companies like Amazon, they pay 0 in federal taxes, if I'm correct.
We have so many loopholes. Well, here's the thing is like whenever we're talking about the word loophole, the question is like, it's not like a clear legal statement. Like it's not defined as a loophole. There's more people using a tax break in a way that it wasn't intended, I guess, is kind of what I usually mean when I say it. But sometimes it was intended that way. Charlie?
So usually when people say tax loophole, what they mean is a tax deduction that's available to everyone that some people take advantage of. And in the case of Amazon, that's a different situation because certain areas like certain states or cities will allow Amazon to be there because it's a huge company without having to pay tax rates. I believe New York City, I can't remember this perfectly, but I believe they were originally offering, when Amazon was looking to open up a new office, they were offering you Amazon to not have to pay property taxes or an income tax there to try to bribe them into moving there. And then I believe, I want to say de Blasio or Cuomo, one of the honchos over there, the head honchos, said that if we don't give this company this break, it's not going to want to move here. And
why do they want it to move there?
Because it's a very large company.
So they'll employ people, and those people will have more money and increase demand. And that'll be good for the economy?
It would increase their supply of money.
Oh, really? But it would also...
Yes, yes, Max. If there is a finite,
go ahead.
If there is a finite amount of wealth distributed throughout the United States, you would want to displace it into New York City. Sure. If you were New York City, that's not really an effect. That's not saying there's an effect in demand. That's saying that you are now moving more wealth into New York City. Is the United States growing faster because it's New York City? No. Is New York City growing faster because it has a larger economy now? Sure. If they were going at 3% and then now they have a higher GDP, then because there are more jobs there, then at 3% of 1,000 versus 3% of 10,000, the 3% of 10,000 is bigger.
Well, sure, supplying a lot of facts at me.
Yeah.
I don't remember demanding them.
Yeah, remember there was a whole thing about where's Amazon going to move to. Yeah. Every state was trying to offer them like their own benefit. But basically, it's just Amazon taking advantage of these offers, kind of.
I definitely think so. Didn't they ultimately end up?
I think we can expect companies to pursue the most profit. And I think it is wrong for governments to offer specific companies tax breaks to try to bribe them into moving.
I totally agree.
An even playing field. Yeah. I think that's something everyone should agree.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous, and I absolutely agree.
Yeah, regardless on the side.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's noted. What about moving from Amazon? What about names like Jeff Bezos? Because I hear there's an argument that he paid. Well, where's my statistic? I found that he pays less than a teacher or less than your average working person.
Is it
like a tax rate, not cash, not cash.
Number as a percentage.
As a tax rate.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a Business Insider and Sayes and Suckman.
Yeah, I know zero about
Mr. Bezos,
about his personal finances. I find it hard to believe he could do that legally, unless I just don't know anything about it.
I don't know anything about him either.
Yeah.
All right, I'll move on. What about people say the middle class is dying? What are your takes on that?
Yeah, well, there's a pandemic going on, so I'm sure a lot of people...
Well, that too.
Yes.
Literally, they're dying. But...
So people have been saying that, but what you see is that actually the majority of people who were in the middle class in the 1990s have now moved up into the upper middle class. The middle class has shrunk as a result of people getting richer, not as a result of a growing a growing wealth disparity. There is a growing wealth disparity, but that's because if you have everyone growing at everyone's wealth growing or incomes growing at 5%, for example, then the people who are richer are going to have their incomes grow faster proportionally. And also, in the past few years, since 2016, I believe, might be 2017, the fastest growing incomes have been in the bottom 25%.
Oh, nice.
Fastest growing incomes as a raw number?
Yeah, the fastest growing incomes as a percentage.
Okay, well, I don't know.
And also at the same time, the income disparity has grown because it's proportionality.
Got it. So we have a large debt, it's safe to say. How do we go about reducing this debt that we have?
That's a great question. So if we're going to go with kind of the number one way to decrease our deficit, that's our year-to-year increase in the debt. The number one reliable way of the last half century is to elect a Democratic president.
Yeah.
Every single Democratic president has left office with a lower deficit, and every single Republican one has left office with a higher deficit than when they entered.
Okay. So, and here's where that's wrong.
How is that wrong?
Well, Obama didn't.
Yes, he did. He cut it by 3/4.
After he increased it to over $1 trillion.
No, because
First day in office, he signed the stimulus bill that he helped write in the month of January.
Fiscal years are offset by one, though. The entire budget there.
No, because the fiscal year was 2009, and it was a bill he signed that went into action.
Yeah, but Bush wrote the budget for fiscal year 2000.
Not for the one that sent the deficit. It's not true. But y'all can fact check this.
Well, we'll fact check this later.
But anyways, but yeah, that bill was, I believe, written in early January 2009, signed Obama's first day in office. And the second thing is the goal should be, in my opinion, to reduce government spending. Nearly 70% of our budget goes to entitlement programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And in my ideal world, those things don't exist. But
why not?
You don't like Social Security or anything?
No, I do not.
Why not Medicare and Medicaid?
Medicare and Medicaid? Medicare and Medicaid.
Sorry, I got it mixed up.
Yeah, well, okay. Anyways, I don't think that it's the government's job to provide those things.
Why?
Why would it be?
Why? Well, why wouldn't it be? Well, so
what? I mean, this is a different discussion, I guess. I don't think we need to have a philosophical.
Okay, I guess we don't have to have a philosophical discussion, but I just feel like when I hear, well, that's not the government's job, I feel like the government's job is to do whatever it is we need it to do, like it's a tool. I don't think that should be a showstopper. I think the answer should be, are we better off if we give the government this job? Should be a better answer than, well, that's not what a government is for.
Well, I mean,
we made it, government, it's been a patchwork quilt of different purposes and changes and updates based on need, you know?
Well, I mean, and I guess we just have a fundamental disagreement there. I think that if that was the case, then what would be the point of the Constitution, right? I believe the point of the Constitution is create a sphere at which the government cannot extend its power beyond. Regardless of whether or not...
I think the Constitution was a pretty thinly veiled compromise between warring factions led by Jefferson and Hamilton with radically different ideas about what the government should look like.
Yeah, I don't. And I think that I think that it was a way of effectuating the Declaration of Independence, which kind of laid out what they believed the role of government should be.
It's safe to say you guys have different views on, say, Medicare for all.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a new topic that a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so here's the thing about Medicare for all. Here's the thing about Medicare for all is like the reason I tend to support it is the same reason why I support free college and all these other things is I think that a few things are true. One, there are Americans who, in order to just exist and progress in life, are assuming so much debt that it's preventing them from spending. Like every time you read an article that says millennials are killing the X industry, the Y industry, even the Z industry, I think a lot of that is because we simply are one of the first generations in American history that are poorer than our parents. And I think a lot of that is due to, and this is a little bit of a kind of a parallel topic, how much, college debt we assume. Debt kills our ability to spend, and people's ability to buy is foundational to like what makes an economy work. And so then if we move from that to like medical bills, a few things are true. One, back-breaking medical debt hurts the economy. It also hurts people. And moreover, when it is so expensive to see a doctor, when our system is so prohibitive for people who aren't of means to get the medical care they need, they avoid the kind of preventative care that would reduce the overall medical expenditures of America. I'll also say, and this is a little bit of a side note, but something everyone should know, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Americans disproportionately shoulder a lot of the world's research and development costs because other countries have legal limitations on margins. Is that right, Charlie?
It's because a lot of the other countries use socialized medicine.
Well, the specific regulation is not an intrinsic necessary part of socialized medicine. A hard cap on the percentage of overcharge they can have over the base production.
I mean, it depends on the country, but
no, that's exactly what I mean. It's not an intrinsic built-in.
Oh, it's not an intrinsic.
That's what
thing.
I said.
But
they're separate.
But they are separate.
They are technically. They are
sure.
Yeah.
But when you eliminate competition, you're going to eliminate. I mean, you eliminate the incentive to innovate. Yeah, I mean, as far as Medicare for all goes, or any sort of socialized medicine, what you do is you need to you have to compromise on quality of care and or ration it. There's no way around that because there is a maximal supply of healthcare that can be provided.
Yeah.
This is something that needs to be accepted. So if you are going to go down the Medicare for all route, I mean, and this is something that I mean, multiple pro socialized medicine I can't think of names. Yeah, humans that are important that, you know, would be an argument from authority if I can think of their names. We'll say experts. There we go. Is that they will say, a government will kind of choose an age at which you quit receiving care, or a limit as to like how much care you can receive, because there's only so much they can provide. That's why in the UK, I believe they ration healthcare for the obese. They ration healthcare for smokers. Because they just cannot provide it for everyone. It's impossible. You can have two of three things in healthcare. You can have affordability, universality, or quality. You can only have two of those three things. And you have to decide what your priorities are. I believe that I want to have quality and affordability. Right now, I don't. I think we
don't have affordability.
I think we don't. I think right now we have some sort of form of universality. We don't have full universality, but we effectively have universality, and I think we have quality, but it's incredibly expensive. But we kind of have the worst of both worlds in that it's an extremely regulated system, and we need to pick a side instead of trying to straddle two different roads.
So I disagree with a lot of what you're saying, because you say that we have universality, but you also say that we don't have the resources to cover everyone. The fact of the matter is, just like I said, if all 300 million Americans had government-provided access to healthcare, it is true that they'd use a lot more medical resources. And it is also true that that might be a heavy weight on our medical resources. But I don't know how I feel about using prohibitively high cost as a way of discriminating. When I think we have a limited number of resources, how are we going to allocate them? I don't think that, rich first is a good way to go. I think that how much a person needs it is a good way to go. I think general societally benefit is a good way. Is a better way to go. I think if we have a limited number of resources and someone is going to be getting the short end of the stick, I think that the poor is not the best way for it to go. And I also think, you say anyone can get healthcare if they need it, but the fact of the matter is the punitive way that healthcare is priced prevents the poor from getting preventative care, prevents them from getting, you say we have quality, but I think that's true for people who can afford to go all the time. But if you can't afford to go to preventative care, if you're only going because it's an emergency when you have no other option, that's not quality. And your overall results are going to be considerably worse than if you were able to go in, semi-regularly. And I also think that the kind of low priority preventative care appointments that we could have a lot more of, that would be a larger percentage of our overall medical visits, would also be, because they're not emergency, we could space them and schedule them a little bit more, and it'd be a little bit easier for us to process them and maybe increase capacity with a little bit more planning.
Yeah. So the reason I say we have universality to some extent is because we do. I mean, both Medicare and Medicaid are there to provide healthcare or health insurance for those who cannot afford it. It's not great because a lot of doctors don't want to accept Medicaid because it puts price controls. And those who do, a lot of the times, will force other patients to subsidize the the failure of Medicaid insurance, in that it's not paying the full price of the good, and so the other people with better insurance need to pay for that. And as far as, I mean, we are talking about a good, we are talking about a product. This is a service provided by someone, and so yeah, you can say, well, we need to ration it this way, but in my opinion, I believe the market should decide the price, because if it doesn't, then and we have the government doing it. It reduces competition, because how does the government decide how to pay individual doctors? Well, and how does and if we start to pay, if we have the government regulating the prices of doctors, what we're going to do is de-incentivize people into becoming doctors. And currently, we don't have enough doctors. That's why that's one of the reasons that healthcare is so expensive. And why would you want to be a doctor when you have to go to school for 20 years or whatever, and then deal with the super hyper-regulated industry?
Well, on the other hand, the idea of people to negotiate for a fair price in the free market presupposes that they have the leverage to hold out for a point that is a reasonable balance between the level of supply and the level of demand. But if someone is at a place where their life is at stake, or where, you know, they need to do something in order to take care of themselves, in order to take care of their family, they don't have the kind of leverage to negotiate. And as a consequence, they can be taken advantage of. This is also why I think worker protections are so important, because like, we need, you know, and this is why unionization is so important, is because people who do not have the leverage to seek a price point in a market that is reasonable, due to how extreme it is. Like, you know, and you could say, well, you know, what should a life be worth on the market? Like, I don't think that's how we should do.
No, I don't think that's how we should. I mean, I wouldn't say that's how. Yeah,
that's not how we should do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. We'll pretend that's a full sentence.
It's a full sentence.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, I mean, that presupposes that there's only one doctor. There are multiple doctors. Yeah. There are multiple doctors that are going to compete for a lower price.
You said there weren't enough doctors,
but there's more than one. So yes. So if there are not enough doctors, so we should try to have a more market system to incentivize more doctors. When there is a lack of supply, increasing the demand is not a good idea.
See, I disagree hard.
And also, there are still multiple doctors. So yes, they're going to compete. They're going to compete for a lower price. And when we make it a more of a market system, and there are more doctors, then the prices will lower, because there'll be more competition.
I disagree hard with the idea that the reason we don't have more doctors is because we aren't in a sufficiently free market driven system. I think it is a lot more the lack of quality early STEM education. I think that when I talk to people and ask them why they're going to doctors, they say that's a lot of school and I hate math and science is hard. Like, that's what they say. They don't say, well, you know, because of the lack of free market, blah, 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 I feel like I'm not able to negotiate for a reasonable price for my labor. They don't say that. No one's ever said that. No doctor has ever said that. Yeah. Because these are people who are already strapping in for like 20 years of grueling labor trying to become doctor worthy.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, we really need to deregulate. Because everything you just listed is a government imposition.
You mean if we deregulated that there would be widely available quality STEM education?
No, if we deregulated...
You said everything.
What? Okay. I don't know what you're trying to communicate to me right now.
I'll let you go then.
But no, I mean, you have to go to a million years of school after college. Yeah, I mean, yes, we should have a better education system. I think everyone should agree that we should have much more STEM education. And this is something we've agreed about 1,000 times.
Yeah, I think we've agreed about it 1,000 times. When it comes to doctoring, so honestly, and I don't know, I suspect you to know, I don't know how much of a doctor's education is like necessary for doctoring, but I do know that I don't want someone with like, you know, a 2-year community college degree performing brain surgery on me. And yeah, so if I walk in, I think, you know, here's one of the things that I think regulation gives us is the confidence to know that these people are being held to a certain standard. Like, if I walk in and this hospital isn't regulated, this doctor isn't regulated, there's no guarantee that he's had any training at all. You know, I don't even know he knows how to hold a scalpel. You know what I mean? I'm trusting him as a person. Guy I don't know, you know, but I don't necessarily trust my politicians, but they're accountable to me because I vote for them.
Wait, were you both for free public education?
Or still no, we are both for increased quality of STEM education in younger ages.
Don't we have the best colleges in America versus the world? So don't we have like the best STEM education?
We meant a younger school. Yeah, we mean a younger school. So I was a tutor in college for 3 years to other college students, and I would meet all kinds of college students who say I'm not that good at math. and they were fine at math. You know, it took me 2 weeks. We went through, they're fine. You know, the problem is they're super intimidated. They've never been taught it correctly. You know what I mean? And like our STEM education in this country sucks, you know? And I think everyone should have some kind of basic level of computer science understanding before they graduate high school. In the modern technical world, you should understand how machines work.
You have to go. I mean, I feel like a lot of schools don't even offer computer science classes. And if you take it, it's an elective.
Yeah, and we both have degrees in computer science. Yeah. So just full disclosure, we're a little biased here. But
I mean,
but like, come on.
Like,
all right, I have another Medicare for All question before we move on.
Good.
So,
what's your question?
One of the things I see, we have like 28 million uninsured, 44 underinsured.
Yeah.
But we have the best Medicare system or hospitals in the world right now. So you mentioned to limit the access of, or limit the number of people going in to keep up the quality. But how do we keep the innovation that we have on something like Medicare for All? Because we have the best innovation for like new drugs versus other countries.
Oh, that's you.
Oh yeah, this one's for me. Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I do want to say is that it is not true. It is true that America has some of the best research development, some of the best medical development and quality in the world. That is true. But it's also true that in some places like Canada, you have some of the best medical programs in the world. I think we can do both. And you're asking how we can do both, and that's something that I'm just kind of talking until I have a good answer to.
Yeah, I can tell. I appreciate the self-awareness.
Yeah, well, I just do what I do what I do. So to answer that question, I guess I just kind of feel like I've met a lot of these research and development people, and a lot of them are just really passionate nerds who love what they do. You know what I mean? Like the research and development investment comes from these bigwigs who are thinking about profit, but I think we just have a really great culture. I think we have a really great STEM culture that comes out of, you know, the exact same kind of STEM dominance that made us, you know, a global superpower. You know what I mean? And I disagree that I think with better education that made people more excited about science, I fundamentally disagree that those people would stop researching and stop testing and stop trying to figure things out. I think Americans are a driven culture of people who they're ambitious and they want to discover and they want to learn more and they want to know more. And that's how we got where we are, you know? And I don't think that would go away just because I don't think so.
Yeah, so I think it would go away. And I don't think that's how we got here because I mean, we had a freer healthcare system previously, obviously. Yeah. I mean, how we got here was through a free healthcare system. And I mean, we have a plurality of the medical patents filed globally. One country has
were those things
more than any has a plurality. That's a lot.
Per capita as
it's
well.
It's like something like 40%. It's not close either.
So not just overall, but per capita. Was that also true before?
I didn't say per capita, but
no, I'm asking.
Oh, I don't know per capita.
Well, I'm just saying. Would you say that was also true before Europe? Any of it went to universal healthcare?
Was it true before Europe? I mean, I have no idea.
I would say that it almost certainly was. 40% didn't happen in 10, 15 years, however long it's been.
And so what I'm saying is about 80.
80.
You can stop.
Okay.
It's been about 80 for the United Kingdom.
Well, I don't know about all of Europe, but I am saying, you know, I'm going to have to Google this because we're in the middle of a podcast, and apparently I'm not allowed to Google during a podcast.
Yes, because that's a weird thing.
Whatever, Charlie. But what I'm saying is the United States had a lot of this dominance over people who had free markets before, and I disagree that that's the only reason we are the way that we are. And I also think a lot of research and development is not like. Yeah,
I don't think. I mean, I think it's a little difficult to pinpoint it because America didn't necessarily become an economic superpower to the extent we are today until post World War I, and at that point, that was when Europe and the previous superpowers were starting to adopt policies that I believe would hinder their economic growth.
Well, but that was also, just for the record, the thing that hindered their economic growth after World War I was World War I, okay? They were the richest countries in the world, and they went deep, deep into debt buying stuff from the United States. And so, like, if that was the turning point, that's another major...
No, I know. I said
they spent the entire time turning their entire continent into, like, a pile of rubble.
Hard to pinpoint.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint. Anyways...
That was my point.
Yeah, I guess what we're saying is it's hard to pinpoint the root cause of American STEM dominance, and it's specifically American medical dominance. I disagree that it is just because of the private market. And in fact, to kind of tidy this up in a little bow, some of the most impressive and interesting achievements have come from the public sector, including the internet, including GPS. Like, a lot of that stuff was developed by the government, and stuff that private corporations now fundamentally rely upon in order to even basic function, and so that research and development didn't require a free market, So, yeah, I don't know. I disagree.
The government developed those things
in competition with other
No, they didn't do it for the people. They did it for the government.
But they did do it.
They did do it, sure. But
that's what I was saying. If we're talking about technological advancement, the government publicly funded.
The government has invented things. I agree with that.
Not just that, but the foundation of the modern world is on government research and development that was not in the free market competition that was funded by taxpayers. The internet, us talking right now, is due to the government funding the internet with taxpayer dollars and then giving it to corporations that don't think they owe the public anything for developing this technology for them.
I think the expansion of the internet and the entire technological revolution of the 1990s was done entirely in the private sector.
Well,
the government inventing something in the 70s.
So look at
the government inventing something in the 70s, and then companies taking advantage of it 20 years later does not mean that the government is the reason these things exist.
No. Well, I don't know. We don't know what would have happened. There's a lot of factors. But I will say that when I look at my iPhone and I think of all the things that went into it, so the internet was funded by taxpayers, right? Okay. So the GPS piece was funded by taxpayers. I'm sure there's other portions. I'll also say this was manufactured largely out of pieces that were made somewhere else and in places elsewhere. And those trade routes and the ability to get things in here were established and protected by the government, by tax dollars. And I think this idea that the public sector and the private sector are deeply intertwined, and they always have been, really. And like almost every major economic advancement has been on the back of the government doing something, like the government deciding to turn our entire manufacturing towards supplying weapons and supplies to Europe.
Except for that
that was a political.
Except for that didn't actually help us economically. We went into a recession.
That huge money infusion.
Yeah. So
in the 20s bubble.
So that didn't actually help us economically, and that immediately after the World War II, we had a recession. And yes, as we just discussed, when the entire continent of the economic powerhouses is destroyed and all of their production facilities are destroyed, then we're going to succeed. But that's also why later in the 1970s and late 60s, that's part of the reason the stagflation happened, along with horrible government policies. But in that, the manufacturing moved overseas to countries that were doing it better than us.
Well, the recession was due largely to the fact that our massive portion of demand in Europe suddenly dropped at the end of World War I, and for some reason our supply wasn't enough to stimulate the economy.
However, supply of what?
We were indisputably better off as a consequence of World War I than we were before, because all of that wealth moved from Europe to the United States. That's a big deal. We were better off as a consequence. Sure, did we hit a recession as we retooled? Absolutely. And then immediately afterwards, we had one of the most booming economies ever. And then we had the Great Depression, and then we had... it was a topsy-turvy couple of years. But then World War II came along, and that...
I thought we were talking about World War II.
We were talking about World War I. What were you talking about?
World War II.
Well, we had the recession. How did we get out of that?
Which one?
What policies did they put in? The one after World War I. The Great Depression.
I kind of think... That one's a complicated one. There were too many factors.
So that's what I thought we were talking about.
I thought we were talking about
earlier. How we got out of it was when all of the production facilities overseas were destroyed. And then as far as, the Great Depression, that's actually a great example of the failure of demand-side economics, which, multiple economic analyses, that's a plurality, right?
Is that
yeah, I think that's
I think it is.
It said that it extended the Great Depression by 10 years. We had, I mean, essentially within the Great Depression, we had two different depressions. We were starting to recover when FDR decided to implement more policies.
Well, there were a lot of factors at play during the entire economic situation between World War I and II. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, what's what. But I will say anytime an economist tells you what would have happened in an alternate universe that was 10 years separated from the one that we live in, you can just throw that away. Okay, that's a guess.
And that's coming from what?
Yeah.
All right. And speaking of war, or bringing up that topic, today we have a military budget greater than the next 10 countries. And at least 5 of those are our allies. So why do we have such a high military budget? How can we fix it? Or do you support the budget where it is?
I mean, as Max said not too long ago, part of our budget goes to protecting the oceans and trade routes.
Yeah.
However, another part goes to NATO and many of the countries there. We fund a lot of other countries' militaries.
But a lot of it also, I mean, we kind of during the Cold War ended up making a lot of enemies. Like I'm gonna use the Middle East as an example. Like, so I think we should dramatically reduce our military spending. I think we should pull it up everywhere we don't need to be. I think we should focus exclusively on defending American trade vessels. And I think we should be militarily isolationist and economically friends with everybody. But I think there is a lot of fear specifically about the Middle East, because I think we made a lot of enemies over there, especially kind of during the Cold War, And I think if we left right now, I personally think what would happen is in 50 years, there would be a new Persian Empire headed by Iran. And I don't think that would be so bad. But I think it would be, eventually I don't think it would be so bad. Empires are extremely stabilizing throughout history, all right? The Ottoman Empire wasn't, so bad to have in the world, like it wasn't so bad.
But I guess the eventual end goal, okay.
No, but what I'm saying is the problem is on the way, some of these people could have nukes, and a lot of them have a very good reason to hate us. Like Iran specifically, who again, I do think would rule, the entire area eventually. I mean, the CIA assassinated the democratically elected leader and, worked with, extreme Islamic clerics to try and, it was bad. It was a bad thing that we did. And now they hate us. And if they end up in control, it's going to be a little while before the next generation comes along, forgets all that, and is cool with us. And, that's a lot of power. So I think it's just scary. I think there is a lot of people who feel scared of the repercussions of baby boomer foreign policies coming back to bite us as soon as we let go.
So we need a big military to protect us from
I don't
these
think
enemies.
that we do. I'm explaining why I think some people think that we do. I think we need to do some really, really serious diplomacy to make friends out of these guys, because they're not going anywhere and we can't keep the entire region unstable forever, because we're just making more enemies and it's getting worse. And also these people are suffering. Like, it sucks. No, we gotta, I think we should reduce our presence. I was explaining why I think it is, we are still there, but I don't think we should be.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think, there's a lot of stability that relies on the back of our presence there. And I think that most people agree we should not have been in the Middle East in the first place.
I disagree. When you say a lot of stability that depends on I hard disagree.
If we left,
I don't consider what we have there stable. I think
it's more stable than it would be.
I think it would collapse and then into something that would eventually be actual stability.
I mean,
with
the rise
people who are
the rise of
self-governed.
The rise of ISIS was driven by by removing troops under Obama.
The rise of ISIS was largely driven by destroying one of the biggest military leaders in one of the biggest military powers in the area, Saddam Hussein, and then creating a massive power vacuum.
The rise of ISIS didn't happen until 10 years later.
And also due largely
15 years later.
Yeah, I know. That's perfect example. We knocked it down and then we held it in place.
Yes, so stability.
And then we pulled out, and then that's
exactly what I'm saying.
It's not real stability, though. We are holding it in this broken, shattered.
That is literally exactly what I said.
Every single thing, as a consequence of our actions, everything that has happened in the Middle East is because of us. The rise of Wahhabism and spreading all over the thing.
Yeah.
The fall of all these democratic republics.
I'm so glad you agree with me.
Like the rise of ISIS, it's because of things we did. And if we leave, it'll be bad for a little while, but then it'll be fine again.
Well,
we can't avoid these consequences forever. And the longer we stay there, the worse it's going to be. And the more...
Well, it's gotten better lately, but...
we can't remove every single piece of stable skeleton in the entire body of the Middle East and then stay there, because eventually we have to leave. And when we do, it's going to be bad as a factor of how long we have been there.
Okay, except for it has gotten better. I mean, in recent years, it just objectively has. As ISIS has shrunk, as multiple peace deals have happened in the past 2 weeks, for example. Yeah, it has gotten better. And yeah, I mean, literally what I said was, most people agree we shouldn't have gone there in the first place. We did go there. We did create a power vacuum that we're now filling, and that vacuum was filled by ISIS when we removed troops from certain areas, and will be filled further if we remove troops now. I mean, but if we're going to remove troops, we need to find a way to not have a power vacuum. I don't know what that would be.
Well, a lot of powers that we've set up to fill vacuums in the past have been overthrown within 10, 20 years after we left and replaced with people even worse.
Yeah. I'm not saying I know what to do. I'm saying I know what to not do right now.
Well, we can't do this forever. And at some point we have to leave. And when we do, it's going to be bad by a factor of how long we've been there. And the longer we stay, the more technologically advanced these peoples are going to be, and the greater the chance that they will have nuclear weapons during their instability period.
Well, I would say that that if we leave, that there's a greater likelihood that they will have nuclear weapons. But
then if we leave in 50 years, you don't think those extra 50 years of
I have no clue. I would say that we would probably monitor them. I don't know what's going to happen in 50 years. But what I will say is, yeah, I mean, it has just grown more stable. This is pretty undeniable. I mean, you can deny
in the last 5 years or whatever, it's become significantly permanently more stable.
I don't know if permanently, but I know it's become significantly more stable.
How are you measuring stability?
Let's say people dying as a result of war. I don't know. I mean, there have been peace deals signed.
People sign peace deals all the time.
People sign peace deals. Yeah, sure. I mean, except for
I'll sign one with you right now.
Well, great. And and if that's how you want to measure it,
I would say a more stable apartment, in your opinion.
I would say it would guarantee we'll never go to war together with each other.
I can guarantee that.
Okay, so wow. So checkmate, buddy.
That's really good. Oh gosh.
Anyways.
All right. So, what are your views on the happened in 2008, and it happened during a few other presidencies, but there were government bailouts for banks or other corporations.
I hate bailouts.
Yeah, I'm also. So here's the thing with bailouts is they're stupid, and here's why they're stupid. Well, it's complicated. I get it. It's one of those problems where it's like when we talk about paying ransoms. You know what I mean? Like when you pay a ransom, you are freeing the hostage, right? But you're also kind of making the other person depend upon ransom money, and you are increasing the market for ransoming. And the reason why I bring it up is because it's a complicated question. And when a bank or when a major corporation knows that it can rely on a bailout in a bad time, it's going to stop preparing and stop planning for a bad time. And so what that means is every single time that we have a recession, it's going to get a little worse because these corporations are going to be a little bit less prepared. And we are disincentivizing people from stocking up for a rainy day. And I'm not thrilled with that kind of bailout. Now, I'm extremely thrilled with the direct to human beings stimulus payments because then they
are... For coronavirus?
Yeah. And in fact, I think that's the form that almost all bailouts should take.
Well, I think it makes sense if there's a bailout when the government is telling you can't work. Yeah, I mean, it's the government. It's I don't know. The government's saying you can't work for whatever reason. Then yeah, they should pay. Right? I feel like most people agree with the coronavirus stimulus thing. But as far as the 2008 bailouts go, yeah, they're dumb.
Well, I am concerned about the people who lost their jobs and the hit in the economy, and we don't want the economy to fall apart as a consequence. But I think if we're going to pay a stimulus payment, I think we should always do it to the people like we did for COVID. You know what I mean? Let them spend, keep the economy going a little bit, make sure they can still feed their family. And we will, if the plan is for the government to spend a lot to keep everything stable and staying up, give it to the people. Let the companies fail, keep the people alive long enough for new companies to take their place. And they will, because all the people will be spending, and someone is going to want that money, and they're going to build what the people are demanding. Yeah. So for a little while, the food industry might swell because we'll be a little poor, and the luxury car industry might shrink because, again, people are going to be poor. It's the middle of a recession. They're living off stimulus payments. But, the people will be fine. And
I don't think stimulus payments should ever happen because first off, they don't actually stimulate. Number one. Number two, I don't think, I think ever obviously a strong word, because I do agree with the coronavirus stimulus payments because the government mandated that you couldn't work. So yes, if the government's doing that, sure. Other than that, no. Maybe I could think of, maybe an exception could exist, but no, not really. And I mean, as far as the people will have money that they want to spend, so someone will create a company. The issue is that the person has to have the money to create the company in the first place. And I mean, there's a reason that when a recession happens, consumer spending follows the path of GDP. When GDP starts to decrease, consumer spending has a delay as to when it decreases. When GDP starts to increase, consumer spending has a delay into when it increases. So, I mean, again, the ability to demand follows supply.
The idea that in order to like have a functioning economy, people who are supplying need some kind of major cash stimulus. It creates an impossible chicken and the egg problem, because how did we get an economy if no one had cash in the first place? But then also, can
I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What do you think a dollar is? A dollar is representative of what you produce. The only reason it's worth anything is because you can trade it for another product. The only reason you get paid money is because of the value of what you produce. And I mean, it's always based on production. But a GDP is production. You cannot consume unless something is produced. We have an economy because people produce things and other people wanted it, and they traded things, and people use dollars as a way to quantify their value of production.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I know that America ships a massive deal of supply over to Africa, and so why is it that doesn't stimulate their economy? In fact, it hurts their economy.
Yeah, it hurts their economy because it undercuts the businesses trying to grow.
What's the difference between local businesses and what's the difference? It's supply. It's the same thing.
Because it's not being sold. I mean, you can go, so to be clear,
if they were buying it and the money was coming to America,
do you want me to answer the question?
Yeah.
So to be clear, the issue is that they cannot, the issue is that the businesses themselves cannot grow, while the quality of life for the African people who are receiving these shipments is increasing. So they actually are getting wealthier. The issue is that the economy there cannot grow because the companies are not incentivized to innovate because they don't have they cannot compete with something being given away for free.
But they don't have to innovate because we are innovating so much. We have
that's why their quality of life is increasing. We are cutting out their potential innovations from the world.
So here's what I don't understand is if the driving force is something being there, something being supplied, then my question is, the
driving force is the creation of new goods and services.
So let's follow
the creation of a newer supply. Yes, let's follow it.
Why? Let's follow the thing. So if I start an eggplant manufacturing factory, I don't know where eggplants come from.
I don't think they're manufactured.
Either chickens or the ground, I assume, based on the name. So if I
could be a reptile.
If I start an eggplant company, and America stops shipping in eggplants, and I start providing them to the people, I feel like the part that's different, the part that stimulates the economy, is I get money, and then I start spending that money, generating local demand. Because if the money leaves, even if the people are paying the same amount to me as they are to America, and the money leaves to America, that stimulates America's economy because it introduces more money there, and then that money is spent. So spending is the background.
Yeah. So no, because the issue is that if the America is giving it to them for free versus someone creating it there, then the people of eggplant land become poorer. Because now they're having to spend money on this product.
But let's say that America was selling eggplants for 25 cents a plant or an egg, whatever, versus a local factory that's spending at 25 cents an eggplant. And the people, there's two towns, and one is buying locally and the other one's buying from America. Which one helps the economy more, or is it equal?
I don't really understand.
Well, the second one is employing locals.
Yeah. So
which increases.
Yeah, so it feels like you're trying to question the necessity of demand. Yeah, demand, needs to exist because otherwise, why is something that you produce? Why does it make someone's life better?
My point is,
wealth is increased. If the amount of eggplants you can have for a unit of work is increased, but if the supply itself is increased, if someone has a supply of 10 eggplants versus a supply of 100 eggplants, and the demand for eggplants is stagnant, then the person with 100 eggplants can sell it for less money, and then the people who want eggplants are wealthier.
Yeah, but here's my point. Here's my point: is demand is patient zero when it comes to an economy, because supply without demand is useless. It's going to rot in a truck.
Except for the fact,
but demand without supply, if every single rich person just died of COVID tomorrow, then new enterprising people in their garages would slowly begin selling smaller amounts of things, and we would eventually build back up to an economy.
Yes, they would produce.
Demand can create new supply, but supply can't create demand. Actually, that's why so many companies spend so much money on market research.
Yeah. So yes, because you're assuming that you can accurately and perfectly perceive demand. You can't. They spend money on market research to try to more accurately perceive if a product that they create will be desirable to the people, and a product they create. You can produce without consumption, but you can't consume without production. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And again, the only way people get wealthier is when they can have more for less, when they can have more of a product for less work, when there is a new product or service. When we talk about things that were that changed the world, when we talk about the Industrial Revolution was a creation of a bunch of new technologies that produced different products for less work. That's why people got wealthier. Everyone demand cotton, but the cotton gin made the people wealthier because they could have cotton for less work.
I'd like to jump away from the supply and demand topic that we're on right now. So I just want to bring it back, supply and demand. Yep. But you mentioned the stimulus checks. Yeah. And one thing that people found odd was the stock market. It had an initial drop-off scare from the coronavirus, but it bounced back. It boomed as kind of where it was before. Some people say it's the stimulus check. Some people say it's the rich own a large part of the stock market and they're just not pulling the money out. But why?
So the stock market is not really.
It's what people think is.
It's
going
what
to
people
happen
think.
In the market. It's
exactly. It's people's
and
faith
it's what
in
people
the market.
think other people think is going to happen.
When you see the stock market go up, what you are seeing is that people who buy stocks believe that the economy will recover, and when it goes down, it means that they think we're in for a little bit longer. So it's a little bit like when you go to predict it to decide, what the chances are of the president winning. You are seeing educated people who are putting their money on predicting what's going to happen, and that's what the stock market is. And so what that means is that the policies that were deployed, either that or some other thing that correlated in time, convinced people that things are going to be better. Although, honestly, I've been trading in the stock market this entire time, and I feel like there is a lot of automation out there. Like, it seems like when a dip starts, suddenly there's a spike that kind of then recovers a little bit. I think there are people with automated triggers where if it gets this low, sell,
Yeah, that's me. Once it reaches a limit, I just put in my limit sell. And sadly, I didn't do that with the few new residential investments hurt me bad. But you win some, you lose some. Tesla, they're insane. But okay, so also before I move on to another topic, UBI, you sound like you'd be against it, and one of you seems like, would you be for it?
So that's a really radical change to how the economy works. I think that my answer is that I'd be open to it. I see there's a lot of countries who want to try it right now, and I would really like to see them take that risk, see how it goes before we do anything, because why would I want to be on the beta version of UBI when I could wait and see how it goes? Yeah, well, that's how I feel.
How I feel is, I know I said earlier I was against, all of the entitlement subsidies and such. And I am on principle, but I think that we're in a country right now where obviously that's never going to happen. And I think that what we should do is try to maximize people's ability to choose for themselves. And I think that UBI will be in replacement of things like food stamps or whatever. I think giving people actual money where they can decide how they want to spend their money is better than the government giving them something and telling them how they need to. I'm giving them gift cards.
Not only that's a great point, and I actually want to swoop here and say I bet we'd save a lot more money on the bureaucracy and be able to put more of that money in the actual pockets.
Do we agree on this?
I think we might accidentally agree on
Do you
this.
want to high five real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
What's up?
Because all the way our tax system, the way our welfare system are so complicated, meaning that we spend a lot of government dollars on sorting through it. You know what I mean? And also it allows us to kind of conceal increases and decreases and make it really hard to say what actually happens at any given time. And I think, that's a great point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could be for that.
Yeah. If it's the same amount of money,
and it gives a lot more dignity to the
poor.
poor because we're not big brothering them about how they spend the money that we give them. You know what I mean?
You should be able to do what you.
Yeah. I mean, once we give it to you, it's yours.
Yeah.
All right. Adding into money for people. Basically, I had an econ 1000 class, and one of the things my professor says is all economists agree that minimum wage is bad for the economy. However, it becomes a morality argument because you don't want, say, sweatshops or anything. That's kind of a different thing, but people getting taken advantage of. But the minimum wage hasn't raised since 2009. Do you both think it should raise?
Inflation happens at about 3% every year, which means that every year since 2009, the minimum wage has decreased by 3% in reality. So it has changed. And I do think we should have a minimum wage. I think we should decide what it is. I think we should, get all our scientists out, get all our data out, decide this is what a living wage looks like. This is what the minimum wage ought to be. And then we should have it auto adjust to inflation every single year, because otherwise, I think it's insane that we would say this ought to be the minimum wage for everybody and then allow it to decrease in value by 3% every year. That's crazy.
Yeah. So this might come as a surprise.
Yeah.
But I am against the minimum wage. And how I feel, and by the way, Max is completely right that if you're going to have a minimum wage, you need to tie it to inflation because, for that exact reason. I know there are countries that have had hundreds of % of inflation a day. Inflation is a thing. When you're just putting it at a specific number, minimum wage can mean nothing very quickly. Yeah. But my belief is that a minimum, essentially the actual minimum wage is $0. What putting a minimum wage law into effect really does is it outlaws a worker's ability to work. To sell their labor for a certain price. Like if I want to work, for example, in New York City, the minimum wage is $15 an hour. If I wanted to work at a job for $12 an hour, and this is a job I wanted to work at, whatever, the employer, small business guy, he could only afford to hire me for $12 an hour, and I was like, that's great. I would not be allowed to work there because the government would tell me no. And I understand that there's this idea that workers don't have the negotiation authority to be able to negotiate with businesses. But if you look at, virtually any big city, big cities in Texas, for example, it will be extremely difficult to find anyone actually paid the federal minimum wage. You'll find it in rural cities because in bigger cities, there's more localized inflation. For example, in New York City, everything there is extremely expensive because their minimum wage is $50 an hour. What happens is that they set the minimum wage to a number. Let's use 15 again. 50. Yeah. And then there's people will fire their employees. They'll reduce their hours so that way they can afford to keep them. And then over time, inflation happens in that area in order to change the $15 an hour to actually be whatever the market value is in terms of dollars. And so all of the prices increase so people can afford to pay their thing. I know Chick-fil-A there, a chicken sandwich was like $6. Here it's like $3.50. And it's so that way they can afford to pay their employees. And then it's like, what does your $15 actually mean? Are you actually having a better life when everything is more expensive? The answer is no.
Yeah, well, I just want to kind of sneak in here real fast and say that although America does have a minimum wage and has for a long time, a year ago, unemployment was like 5%. And it did not suddenly tank because we hiked the minimum wage. It was the COVID and everything. But there is not rampant unemployment. Unemployment is not a major problem in this country. So when we say, there is a certain minimum wage at which it will be hard on employment, I think that's true. but there is absolutely no evidence that we as a country federally have hit it. I will say that New York City is crazy expensive, but still likable, unlike Los Angeles.
And
Sorry.
it's what is, I mean, is there minimum wage? It doesn't actually.
And I also
actually help the people.
I don't know. New York City has been expensive for a long time, and I think that has more to do with the fact that they are like, I don't know. I'm sure it's complicated. It's a massive city. People living in like.
It's in part because, I mean, the lowest you can pay your employee is $50 an hour. I mean, if you have a full-time employee, that's $600 a week versus the like $280 you would pay someone to the federal minimum wage. And also, I mean, yes, they did have a spike in unemployment among part-time workers the month that the minimum wage law was enacted.
But now. I mean, I don't know what kind of spike happened a month after the law was enacted.
During the month that it was enacted.
But I will say that, like, unemployment is not a major problem in this country, and it clearly seems to have worked out once that spike was done, and that's why it was a spike and not a raise to a plateau.
After a ton of inflation.
If there is... So a ton of inflation happened, like, well, how long was the spike?
What do you mean? I mean, it correlated with inflation, right? I mean, as in the minimum wage caused more inflation, or caused inflation.
I feel
like localized inflation, and then as the currency inflated, I feel like people were able to hire employees again.
I'd be really interested in seeing your math because I feel like I'm skeptical that you have done the work in mapping 8% of inflation and how it correlates to 8% in unemployment. Did you? Oh, Charlie wrote an article about this, and everyone should check it out.
Well, it hasn't.
Oh, he hasn't published it.
Okay.
So in like a year, set your alarms.
It'll be up.
It'll be out there someday.
But yeah. So don't worry. I have looked at the numbers.
I'm just saying when people say, we can't do this, we have to undo this because it's going to cause a problem. And I look around and I don't see that problem. I mean, okay, so maybe it is inflation, but there is a minimum wage still, and we don't have an unemployment problem in this country except for COVID. I mean, outside of COVID.
But you wanted to tie it to inflation. So therefore, whatever unemployment originally happened would then.
But what if we tied it to inflation right now? Stopped where we are right now.
There's not inflation?
No. What if the minimum wage level relative to inflation, the amount of value, if we stopped it right now, we don't have an unemployment problem right now except for COVID. I'm talking about our extra COVID economy. So clearly there is a minimum wage point at which it is not a burden on unemployment. And, that value is, 6 months ago. Whatever the minimum wage was 6 months ago relative to inflation, we could say it was at least that minimum wage is not a burden on unemployment. So I don't know what the number is, but there is a number. It's another mini Laffer curve. And I think this idea that, people should be able to work for, 3 pennies an hour.
They should be able to work for however much they want to work for.
But at a certain point, here's the thing is desperate people don't have the leverage to negotiate.
Except for they do, because there's, as you just said, not an unemployment problem. And in fact, I mean, as I said earlier, it's extremely difficult to find someone being paid the federal minimum wage in large Texas cities. So clearly, I mean, why would that happen if they didn't have the ability to negotiate? In these cities where there are extremely low unemployment rates, but pre-COVID. That's pre-COVID is what we are referring to, because
whenever we make any
7 whatever months,
we're not talking about
too much.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
All right, so it's FM 91.7 WHUS at the top of the hour, and I want to move on to one of my final questions. Is views on the Trump tax cuts that happened maybe a year ago. Yeah. The Tax Foundation said it would add $448 billion, a deficit over the next 10 years. Joint Committee says $1 trillion, but they also say it could boost the GDP. That's the other side.
Yeah, they predicted that, and then we had our largest tax revenues ever. So, it clearly didn't happen. And then not only that, I mean, cut the spending. Don't take more money because you're unable to balance the budget. Texas doesn't have an income tax. We have a balanced budget.
Well, we have a property. Texas
we have an extremely large property tax.
Yeah. However, here's kind of how I feel about it.
Trump's tax.
Oh, Trump's tax cuts. Okay, so here's how I feel about it. And in fact, starting tomorrow, every single day, I'm gonna post one graph proving this point on my Twitter at MaxFMills. So if you're curious, listeners, by the time you hear this, there should be 4 or 5 graphs up. Almost every single metric of Trump's economic success post-tax cuts is a direct continuation from the numbers trends of Obama post-2010. We did have a slight slowdown during the election as a consequence of investors being unsure about which, because there were 2 radically different paths ahead, and you don't gamble with uncertainty. Uncertainty is the enemy of any market. That's just how it is. But if you account for that spike and you draw a line, it is almost a perfect slope every time. A few metrics Trump does a little worse, but he never does any better. So the best thing we can really say for Trump and his tax cuts is that the damage was minimal, or non-existent. But was it worth the deficits that we're going to get? I mean, no, because he didn't even really put that money in America's pocket. He just kicked it down to the road to when taxpayers pay off that debt someday.
All right.
Although they were.
All right, world. So let me go ahead and tell you what actually happened. Yeah.
Okay, bringing world to this conversation.
Yeah,
all right.
So for the entirety of Obama's presidency, the real wage rates did not raise at all. They didn't start again until Trump was president. Not only that, 93% of the jobs that were added underneath Obama were part-time jobs. That has not been the case under Trump, and that is largely because of things like Obamacare that mandated that the company provide health care if it had a full-time employee. So you need to break down what specific numbers you're talking about. If you're talking about real GDP growth, that has been higher underneath Trump, so you do need to adjust for inflation. If you talk about wage rates, it has been growing for the first time since Bush under Trump. And also, I mean, again, the bottom is growing. The bottom 20% is growing way faster under Trump than it ever grew under Obama, as far as their wages grow, not in population. The unemployment has shrunk a ton, obviously, until COVID, and has been people adding full-time jobs, not part-time jobs.
Not only am I going to post one graph per day starting tomorrow for Obama and Trump's terms of different economic metrics, I'm going to let Charlie choose the graph order. So come on, at MaxFMills, even if I'm wrong, I'll be honest, Charlie will choose the number. I will pull up a graph from the last 10 years, and I'll post it.
I might hand make a graph.
Yeah.
I'll just put a huge...
Oh, I don't know about that. So, we can fact check this later, listeners. Come on over to Twitter.
All right. And for my final question, trickle-down economics. That's my question.
Trickle-down economics is it is a straw man term that left people have placed upon supply-side economics.
I prefer voodoo economics.
Yeah. So the idea that... I don't even know. The way trickle-down economics is described is something that's ridiculous because it is a ridiculous idea. It doesn't make any sense. It's something like you give rich people money and then poor people have money. It doesn't make sense. Fortunately, it is not supply-side economics at all. It's not a real economic theory.
Oh, then what is the real economic theory?
Supply-side economics was strawman by the idea of trickle-down economics.
No, I'm giving you an opportunity to say what you do believe instead of saying what you don't believe.
I feel like we've been talking about it the whole time.
Is Reaganomics something different?
It's the same thing. Charlie's saying that
trickle-down economics was a political attack on supply-side.
It is an epithet. It's
They say it's immoral to let people keep more of their money.
Well, I mean, everyone takes from society every single thing that. So Charlie's already kind of answered this question with the supply side economics answer at the very beginning of the podcast. So I'm going to let you guys go to that. So instead, I'm going to talk about the moral argument here because Charlie said, it's about letting people keep more of their money. But here's a fact: every single person is taking from society. The fact that you were born into this society is because you are standing on the shoulders of thousands of generations who have worked tirelessly to get us where we are today. And you owe mankind. You owe future generations to carry the torch and pass it down. You do, And when we talk about all of the infrastructure that is taxpayer funded, when we say, does Apple owe the public for inventing the internet? Yeah. Apple did not build the internet. Amazon did not build the roads. They heavily used the post office. They didn't build that either. You know what I mean? Like, if we talk about what has been inherited from society, if we talk about the education that every single one of those enterprising minds got from society, if we talk about travel infrastructure, if we talk about technology developed on taxpayer dollars, if we talk about the baseline research and development tasks that we pour billions, hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars into every single year that is used in the free market. Well, it's not this idea that, oh, well, I made the money, so it's my money. No one is an island. Humans are colony animals, and we build these things together. And I disagree that you are morally obligated to every single penny that is earned by, whatever. I disagree.
So what Max is referring to is not stuff that costs hundreds of billions of dollars. We're talking about, single-digit percentage of the budget.
Yeah, that's what I said. Hundreds of billions of dollars.
The budget's like $4 trillion. Okay. Well, and then also, we're also talking about things that are offered to everyone. When we're talking about public services, they're offered to everyone. If that's the case, why didn't other people create these things? Well, so yes, no, they did earn these things, and they did earn these things when other people did not. And while being offered, or while both having public education and roads.
Yeah.
And I don't know, many people also go to private school.
But yeah, there is not an equal distribution of these taxpayer funded things. And also I think, there's not an equal distribution. There's not equal opportunity in this country. And I think, some people have inherited a lot better from this country than others. But I also think, if you are using American taxpayer-funded infrastructure and American taxpayer-funded, I think this idea that you pay back in, I think that's fine. I also think we have what we have in part because the previous generations, they paid back in. Yeah. And we have to pay back in for the next generations to come up and have those same opportunities.
Of course, yes, of course.
Because they haven't had those opportunities.
Of course. I think that everyone. Yeah, everyone should pay back in, and they should pay back in for the the single digit percentage of the budget that everyone was granted.
So do you think that everyone should pay back in like in proportion to kind of the level of opportunities provided them by the government and society?
Well, I think that's extremely difficult to quantify.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely difficult to quantify. So what I would say is, everyone should pay, let's say a flat tax rate. Everyone should pay, let's say a 10% income tax or something.
Do you think so? So, kind of getting a little bit off topic. It's a tangent, but well, let's talk about this.
So we've been so on topic.
You're right.
That's disappointing.
Anyways, all I'm saying is I'm going off topic, but all I'm saying is there's not equal opportunity in this country, and I think this idea that every single person had equal opportunity and pulled from it is ridiculous. But I don't want to go into a social podcast because we want to talk economics.
Yeah, we want to talk economics.
All right. Well, I think this is a good spot to wrap up the podcast. And basically, in the end, as a summary, what's the final message each of you wants to say? Maybe something you want to touch up on or something you want to address as the final ender?
I'm going to say no one has perfect access to information and no one knows everything. But the fact of the matter is, if something is true, it's going to withstand scrutiny. And I think conversations like the kind me and my brother have, where we bring what we have and we admit when we don't know something, and we are able to sit in a room and have a real conversation and consider the things the other person has said, is, I think, something that America's missing. I think it's something that if we had it, we could have better ideas. I think a lot of times things become so polarized that we aren't able to compromise to a middle ground. Go ahead.
Okay, thank God. Because I realized I was interrupting. But anyways, if you find out you're wrong about something, that should be great because it should feel like the new opinion you now have is a better opinion.
Yeah, and totally. And I also want to say, if Charlie and I were in Congress, we'd get a lot done. That, we could compromise, we can talk, we can give each other a little to lose a little. We could do that. Also,
voters,
but also what I'm saying is, we could talk about the issues that everyone cares about. How about this? CPS is dramatically underfunded. In our state, Texas, a study recently found that the system is re-traumatizing children. In some cases, CPS caseworkers didn't have a placement for the kids and had to watch them in 8-hour shifts in the CPS office, sleeping on the floor in groups. Like,
okay. Yeah. I think, snap, crackle, pop. I think a lot of our a lot of our foundational values and stuff are based around the ideas of consent and being able to agree on something in mutual decisions, and with the idea that children are unable to consent. And I think that it should be universally agreed upon that the government should really, I mean, it is the government's. I'm trying to think what
it is society's responsibility to take care of our abused and neglected children. Yeah, it's because they can't take care of themselves.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's. I mean, the government should be the final line to make sure that children are okay.
And that is not an economics conversation. It will cost us to do this.
Which is by the way, I'm more of a libertarian person, but I also I believe in public education because I don't believe if a child does not have, if a parent does not allow their child to get educated because we only have private schooling, then I do believe that it's the government's job to step in and make sure the child gets educated.
Yeah, we're on a tangent again, but here's kind of here's how we're gonna wrap up. The reason why I volunteered to come on this podcast, Bill, is because I love my brother with all my heart and I respect him deeply, and he challenges me every single day. And I truly believe that if people were able to talk the way that we were, the country would be in a better place. We would take care of the things that all of us agree on, and we'd be able to form compromises that everyone could be moderately happy with. And that's what we're missing.
I love you too.
Yeah, I hope I hope we help bring that about.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for coming out. Again, this is Max Mills and Charlie Mills. Ooh. This is The Way Podcast. Just type in podcasttheway.com to find more.
Bill, sorry, I forgot to say something. I was going to advertise our podcast.
Of course.
We are BVice, BVICE. We do comedy podcast, comedy advice. It's dumb. That's it.
Sounds good. Again, this is podcasttheway.com. Thanks for coming out. Deuces.